Hello, all. BL Carter here. Hoping that you are doing well and working on the pieces to your puzzle. We are. I'm here back at you again with this government shutdown because what I'm seeing is a lot of businesses, banks, etc., are saying to the federal employees that are now going back to work that they're waiving any fees that they incurred during the shutdown, any negative impact financially. They're waiving it, or they're delaying. They're not reporting to the credit bureaus if they're late, et cetera, et cetera. Well, my question is, when does Main Street get those same benefits? Because Main Street was impacted as well. Every time you had a fellow employee that didn't get paid, they couldn't go spend, which meant the cities and towns had a loss of tax revenue from, loss of sales. Those businesses where they usually frequent, they've got sales down. And when their sales go down, as you all know, when it comes to business, if the income's not, revenue's not coming in, they're cutting hours. So those employees, and I personally know several employees who had their hours cut during that time because either the businesses weren't bringing in the revenue or they were doing precautionary cutbacks just in case it carried on longer. So these employees, so now they've lost income. If you normally work, 30 hours a week at $10 an hour, you're normally bringing in, two something after taxes. So, but we're going to leave the taxes out of it, just 300. 30 hours a week at $10 an hour, $300 a week. Now, what happens if you get cut down to 20 hours? So now you're at $200 a week. So that's $400 out of your household budget for a month that's lost. Most people working those hourly jobs like that don't have an extra $400 to lose. Is anybody thinking about them? Is anybody reversing their overdraft fees, their late fees, paying their car note or their light bill or whatever it is? No, nobody's thinking about them. Is anybody saying, okay, so you were late on your little Visa payment, so we're not going to report to the credit bureaus during this time frame? No, they're not. All the Main Street people who've been affected as a trickle down, if you will, from this shutdown just have to eat that. It's time out for that. It's time out for that. What happens if you were looking for a job, had been looking for a job, and you've got your applications, your resumes in all over the place, and it just so happens that you finally get a call at the beginning of the shutdown. But you go through all the process, the second, third interviews, all of that, and it comes time to onboard you, and you don't have you can't find your Social Security card. So okay, run to Social Security office and grab a new one. Well, that's federal. They're not operating. So how do you get proof of your Social Security number that complies with this new E-Verify system? Now, you might be able to pull a driver's license that may have your social on it. You might be able to pull medical records that'll have your social on it. You might be able to pull school records that have your social, previous tax returns, etc. But no, according to this E-Verify, you must have the actual Social Security card or a letter from Social Security stating what your number is. So, think about that. So this job you've been waiting 6 months to get, you're probably tapped financially because you've been out of a job or underemployed or whatever it is. And now it's finally coming around for you to be able to get yourself back together. And government shutdown, so you can't get the information that you need to do it. And, some might say, well, you should have kept your Social Security card. Well, yeah, we should have. But anything can happen. Anything can happen. People break into cars left and right. People stealing left and right. Stuff happens. It gets lost. Who knows, whatever. What about the SNAP renewals? All those merchants who submitted all their SNAP renewal paperwork like they were supposed to, but it didn't get processed before the shutdown. So all those merchants get to have lower income, lower revenue coming in, and all their clients get to do what? I'm sorry, not their clients, their employees. take fewer hours because the revenue is not coming in. Now, what if you're in an area where the one store is the only store that you can really buy from, unless you go to a little corner store and pay 2-3 times the amount of, the cost of the product. So now if you've got your little SNAP benefits, but the grocery store in your area, for whatever reason, can't process it. So now you've got to go to the corner store, and I don't know why I'm thinking of New York, but now you've got to go to the corner store and pay $4 and change for a gallon of milk that's $2.19 at the grocery store. So now you've just spent double. And we're talking about cutting out SNAP anyway. We're telling people on the one hand to be responsible with their spending, but behind the scenes, they've got stopgaps in place to keep them from being responsible and frugal with their spending, because if they need milk for their kids' cereal or whatever it is they need the milk for, they've got to go pay ridiculous prices. Because, and I'm using New York for an example, I know for a fact they don't have a whole lot of places to get decent food. And even fewer places to get healthy food. So what happens to those people? If they're at the grocery store, they can't process their SNAP. So they say, okay, you know what? I'll go ahead and just pay cash. Let me limit, get the bare minimum, pay cash, and then, hopefully in a week or so, all of this will figure out, and then I'll be back to doing what I need to do. Well, so let's say they paid that $100 cash for, whatever their groceries were. Next week rolls around, it's not resolved. And the week after that. Do they necessarily have transportation to pay a taxi to go to another borough or somewhere else to buy from a store that's their SNAP stuff is still in place and they can actually use it? Do we think about that? Or what about the ones who did do that, who incurred additional costs to go use those SNAP benefits somewhere? We're not thinking about those. We're thinking about the federal employees. And let's just be real. I have nothing personal against federal employees. But if truth be told, there are several scenarios where I can tell you directly federal employees screwed over Main Street people. I know for a fact several situations in my years of working and working with people in the social service arena. I know for a fact too many scenarios where federal employees refused to do their job or chose to deny benefits, services, or whatever it was to a Main Street person, a regular Joe Schmo, for personal reasons, for whatever reason other than what policy said. That I know for a fact. So there's a part of me that says, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, you're furloughed now. Tough. You get to deal with it because you didn't give a damn about the person who you screwed 2 years ago, who was trying to get something processed, and you took your time about it because you didn't like the way they looked, or you didn't believe their story, or you felt some kind of way, or one of your buddies called and said, hey, well, he was rude to me, so don't process his stuff. So for those federal employees that are furloughed, tough. So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for them, just because they wouldn't care about screwing you. They would not care about cutting this and doing that to screw you as a Main Street person. But yet, what are we doing now? What are the companies and businesses doing now? Running to their rescue. Now, they didn't work, but they're getting their back pay. If they didn't work, they shouldn't get paid. Now, it was not their choice, so they didn't work, they get half of the pay. But if the rest of the Main Street has to suffer the consequences for this daggone shutdown, then as far as I'm concerned, they need to suffer consequences too. And you know what? Since it wasn't their fault, give them half their pay, because they were sitting at home. Now, the ones who actually went into work, who clocked in and worked, give them their full pay. But the ones who did not work, the ones who might have been able to work from home, but they were prohibited by federal law to the point where federal agencies specifically reminded their employees you are not allowed to work even from home on your personal computer, your personal time helping people. If you do, we can charge you with a crime. Yes, the federal government did do that. They notified employees and said, if you try to work while you are furloughed, this is a crime. So they weren't able to help people, and it isn't their fault. But truth be told, there's probably some people down the line that they didn't help that they should have in the past. So you know what? You didn't work, you don't get your full pay. Give them half their pay. Or if you want to give them back all their pay, then as far as I'm concerned, there should be a moratorium on all fees, late fees, overdraft fees, over the limit fees, whatever fees were charged across the board. Every single person that lives and works in the United States that's not a senator, that's not that was not directly affected by the shutdown. And I mean all them folk in Washington D.C. that were still working, getting their checks. They don't get the benefit of what I'm about to recommend. But everybody else, all us Main Street folk, as far as I'm concerned, there should be no bank fees during the entire shutdown time frame. No utility late fees, no credit card late payment fees, no card note payment fees. If they missed 2 days on their insurance and technically had a lapse because it wasn't paid for 2 days because they're scrounging up money and trying to sell on eBay and offer up and let go and all these other places, garage sales and stuff that they can, all the insurance lapse should be waived, if you will, or excused. They shouldn't have an insurance lapse on their record, especially if they can show they've maintained insurance all along and they've got a lapse during this time frame. Obviously, they're affected. So, this punishing Main Street, it's just wrong. It's just bottom line wrong. And my question is, when does Main Street stand up and say something? When does Main Street stand up and speak? Banks? Y'all got enough money. It's not hurting you, bankers, to moratorium on all fees during the time frame. That's every single bank. Utility companies, it's not hurting you. Moratorium on all the late fees or reconnect fees or whatever it was during that time frame. Only that window that the government was shut down. And if it shuts down again, the same thing should happen. Because Main Street is not up there shutting this government down. Main Street is out here busting their butts every day trying to live and trying to get by and do what they need to do. And you know what? Truth be told, there are going to be a few that were not affected to this level, and they'll get to, have an overdraft fee waived. So what? And when I say a few, I mean, if I did the stats, the percentage would be so small. So what? You have, a small 0.5% maybe of people that are getting over with not paying overdraft fees compared to the how many other percent that genuinely deserve the benefit that are not going to get it? What about the cities and towns that lost revenue and sales? How does that trickle down in the long run? So we can expect come November a new referendum on the books, on the ballots to increase local taxes because now we got to make up the shortfall from this fiasco shutdown thing. The employees who businesses cutting back hours because, let's say if they're a government contractor, the bulk of their revenue comes from federal government contracts. They can't work. So, one business alone had to lay off 9 people. 9 people from one business alone. So that federal government shutdown not only impacted the rest of, but it impacted the business owner, his household, as well as the household of 9 people. And it wasn't, for them, it wasn't hours cut back. It was total layoff. So that meant he might not have had gas to get his kids to school. He might not have had the money to go get his daughter's asthma medicine, or for his wife, the wife getting her hair done. Now that's something they can do away with. But now that I bring it up, what about all the services that didn't get done? Truth be told, I'm pretty sure a lot of people say, well, okay, I usually get my hair done every week. Well, I'm gonna have to cut that back to every 2 weeks. So, might be okay. She's figured out now that she can get her hair done every 2 weeks instead of every week. She's learned to live with that. But what about the stylist? The stylist had a regular flow of customers coming in every week. Now the stylist has half of those customers. So now we got the stylist household who's affected. And so we have another set of children, if they have them, assuming they have children, who are not getting the income in the home like they used to get. So now we basically just position the stylist to probably need the SNAP benefits in the future. Or how many other households have now been positioned to need government benefits in the future because of this daggone shutdown? How many people's credit? I don't hear anybody saying, okay, we're going to waive credit late fees or not late fees, late reporting or whatever it is on anybody's credit during this time frame. Let me correct that. On anyone other than the federal employees who were furloughed. And when I looked this morning, you have to show documentation that you were actually furloughed. You're actually a fellow employee and you were furloughed. So those 9 guys that lost their jobs, they got laid off. They don't qualify. Main Street people, you don't qualify. The SBA, I think their stats said there was about $30 billion lost to small businesses. $30 billion lost for small businesses during that little time frame. What's small business? Small business is Main Street. That's your regular mom and pops or, your aunties or whomever it is. That's your regular folk. They keep this country turning. They lost that. They ate that. So here's my question. How many support a moratorium? Reverse all the fees. Give these people back their money. Banks eat it. And you know what banks should, the federal government bailing out banks and companies left and right in the past, bail them out. You pay the banks back. Banks reverse all those fees. Utility companies reverse all those fees. And federal government, Trump, Republicans, Democrats, whoever, y'all write a check collectively. You sit there and say you got 100 in Senate. You have 400 and something in the House of Representatives. Divide up the amount, and each one of y'all pay your share to pay back all of these banks and utility companies and whomever else for the fees that Main Street had to pay for y'all's foolishness, for y'all can't get along, for y'all's temper tantrums. And while we at it, truth be told, this wall was so critical. It's such an emergency now. Republicans had control of the House for how long? And they didn't do the wall then. It wasn't done then. It wasn't such an emergency then. But now all of a sudden it's such an emergency to the point we got to shut the government down as soon as Democrats take control of the House. That's bull. But I encourage y'all, like and share. Let's get some momentum behind this. We need to push for all of the fees across the board. If you're not not a Republican, a senator, a representative, or someone who was working in D.C. or wherever at the time of the shutdown, whatever fees you encountered during this time frame from any financial institution at all, be reversed, be waived, be, whatever you want to call it. Any negative backlash to your credit, your, as I mentioned, insurance, to like your insurance record or any other records that, there was a lapse in service, all of that be reversed so it doesn't negatively reflect you. So push for this. This is something I'm going to push for, and I'm going to keep pushing this because I think it needs to be done. It's time out for them to stop doing what they're doing and pushing nickel and dime in basically Main Street America. Let me know what you think. Take care.